What is up, YouTube guys? Jericho426 coming at you with another Marvel Contest of Champions tier list, actually. So if you did tune in for the last tier list, I did say that while we were reviewing all the new champions of 2021 in January, I would be updating with all of the buffed champions of 2021. And so, guys, this is that video. And again, let me always say, put this little reminder out there that this is my kind of personal opinion. I guess it is my personal opinion, but it is based off of not just my preferences. There are some on here that I would rate maybe higher or lower based on my personal preferences, but in the end, this is based off of what I'm seeing from the community, what I'm seeing online, and also what you guys have told me as well. So, with all that being said, guys, if you do appreciate or like even a smidgen of the content on this video or any of my channel, please do hit that little subscribe button and the little thumbs up for me. It really does help with growing the channel. A couple things. I did change up the format just a little bit here, and let me go ahead and do one more thing here. Can I bold? So on the last video, I had a couple comments after the last video. One was saying it was a little bit difficult to see, so I've kind of blown it up bigger and I've changed some of the colors around, so hopefully this is easier to see. Let me know, let me make sure, guys, there we go, that you can see this because obviously you want to be able to see the content out here that I'm putting out. So let me know in the comments that this is okay for you. As well, if anybody has an issue with how much talking I'm doing, then you can blow it out your blowhole. No, but seriously though, if you just want to see the final thing, just skip to the end because it'll be there. So anyway, guys, let's get right into it. We're gonna, again, I like to start in a weird alphabetical order, and so we're gonna start with the cosmic class here. And the first one is Angela. And Angela, I think, who was a very lackluster champion before, really got a great buff. Now, she is still not this gigantic damage dealer, but if you play her like I do, which is you basically just keep her between a special 1 and a special 2, never hit that special 2 threshold, and just keep on rotating out your special 1s, then you'll maintain a higher level of Furies on her. Plus, my absolute favorite thing about Angela is that she can block non-contact hits, so she is really my go-to when it comes to like Iron Man, Infinity War, or Ebony Maw, Nova, any of those really annoying champs, Domino. I love using her for that. So she is going to absolutely go into oh, delete that out. Man, I'm not doing well already. What is this junk? She is going to go into the exceptionally good category because she is exceptionally good. Next up on the list is Terrax, and Terrax is, you know, I pulled a 5 and a 6-star version of him. I was really hoping for something remarkable from Terrax, but in the end, he still feels a little lackluster. But I know that again, that's my personal thoughts on him, but from what I've seen from the community, he is better than maybe I'm giving him credit for. So based on everything, I do think he needs to be awakened in order to be a good champ, but I would totally take Terrax and I would put him in the good slot. Again, I don't think he's exceptionally good. If you disagree with me, and again, this is always a rule, guys, if you disagree with me on any of these on these rankings, prove me wrong. Send me some video, let me see that I'm wrong, and I will totally change it up if you can prove me wrong. But speaking of kind of proven wrong, Nova, man, he's just one of those champions where before he was kind of just, I don't want to say trash, but he was just kind of lackluster, and then he got a buff, and I would say he's still kind of lackluster. He's just a little bit maybe less lackluster than he was before. I was looking up gameplay for him, and I did see a really good video of him. It was only like 1:52. But you know, the thing is that, man, his gameplay is just like so kind of monotonous and slow. That 1:52, I had to check it. I was like, did this say 1:52 or did it say 5 minutes? I mean, it felt forever. That being said, guys, he's not completely useless. Much like Terrax, I would really put him in more of a defender slot a lot of times. But I am going to go ahead, I'm going to put Nova in the good category. I think he did get a good buff. It's just he's not my favorite, you know, and he just doesn't seem to really be what the community wanted out of a Nova. I really think they could do more with him. Obviously, with stuff coming up this year. It looks like they might end up revisiting Nova. Who knows? Next up is Venompool, one of my absolute favorite buff champions. Someone who really deserved a buff and really got one. And I really like Venompool. Venompool? Whatever I said. He's really only good. He's not really only good for those longer lasting fights. He can be really good in a fight with someone who also has a lot of buffs. You just use that special one over and over. You absorb their buffs and you get him stronger and stronger. But again, he really does excel in those longer lasting fights too, right? So, and that's kind of what he's built for. I really like Venompool. I think he could have a little bit more utility. Obviously, he could have maybe some immunities as well. Again, not many of the symbiotes have a whole lot of immunities to them. For that reason, even though, like I said, I really love Venompool, I'm going to put him in the good category. I don't think he is the exceptionally good. I think if you gave him just a little bit more utility, he would be exceptionally good. That being said, I wouldn't hesitate to rank up Venompool. You know, and again, this is one of those things where it's like, well, you know, you're putting him against other people in the Cosmic class. I would save rank up material for other people, but I will totally get to ranking up my Venompool. I think he is really worth it. Gamora is one that kind of is, man, we just heard today, she's getting a third buff. She was never terrible in the first place, and then she got a buff, and then she got a second buff. And after the second buff, I didn't notice a whole lot of difference with her, really. And so I think the next buff they give her, they need to make it more verbose. Maybe they need to make it more obvious what's getting buffed and how well she's doing. So for right now, I don't think Gamora's bad, but I don't think she ranks exceptional. So I'm going to put her in a good category. Now, if you're noticing a trend already, I will say that I think most of the champions that were given buffs are good. And so, you know, I still don't have any trash champions on here yet, guys. And I think that they did a pretty good job with most of these. So, anyway, we'll keep on going. King Groot. King Groot, another one like Groot, who for some reason still doesn't have a buff, and maybe I think Groot and Karnak, and probably Ebony Maw at one point, were maybe the three most, well, and Joe Fix, everybody would say that, so the four most deserving of a buff, right? And Groot is still, as voted on by the community, everyone thinks he's the worst in the entire game. So King Groot was another one that was pretty bad, and he got a pretty cool buff. I think that his damage numbers need to be boosted a little. He does come packing a lot of utility, and he's got some cool mechanics the way he works. I do like him. But again, I think he's missing just a little bit of damage there. And so because of that, again, we are going to be putting him into the good category. Now, remember, guys, this is where my tier list, good, you know, people, I don't know why. It's where they hear good and they think bad. They're not bad. Right? I mean, again, you could consider this, you look at other people's tier lists, you know, beyond God tier, and then exceptionally good or something like that. But I just like mine, it's plain and simple. But what this is an order of, if I had these champions, and with their usefulness, who would I rank first, right? And so God tier people I would rank first, exceptionally good, and then good. So, let's get into the tech class. And for some reason, I thought Tech came right after Cosmic, and I have no idea why I did that. So here we are, guys. We're in Tech, and we're out of order, but whatever. So we have the Tech class here, Howard the Duck. Howard, as he used to be known, Howard the Suck, is one of the champions that brought me back into the game really early on. Like, I think maybe 2 years, well, whenever he was released. A couple years after the game released, I played initially, wasn't too into it, and then saw Howard the Duck was in. I was like, Howard the Duck! And I went and I grinded the arena, and I got myself a 3-star Howard the Duck. I was so proud of myself, and I really, and I really loved him. And so, but you know, at the end of the day, he was not the greatest champion. But whoa, did he get a really substantial buff? And now he can do a lot of things. And Howard really is a great tech champion, I think. And so because of his greatness as tech champion and the damage he can deal and some of the utility he brings, we're going to put him in exceptionally good. I think Howard the Duck is that good. I think he is an absolutely phenomenal champion for the game after his buff. Next up, we have Ultron. And again, Ultron was never a terrible champion, but holy moly, did he kind of just take the cake whenever he got his buff. There are Ultron videos all over YouTube right now just showing off the immense amount of damage he can do. He's a robot champion as well, which gives him his own set of immunities and abilities. And he has his evade ability, and he has the ability to pump up those damage numbers with his kind of fury-ish buffs, right? I mean, he is just a crazy champion. But that being said, no matter how crazy he is, he's not broken, which is good. That makes him a good and balanced champion. I do think maybe some people could argue with me on this, but me personally, I'm going to put Ultron into the exceptionally good category. Now, I don't personally think he's God tier, at least God tier on my ranking system, but what do you think, guys? Do you think I'm wrong about that? Would you put Ultron up with Shang-Chi, Odin, Hercules? Would you put him up there as just as good as those champions? Argue with me about it, guys. I will totally hear you out on that one. Nebula. Nebula's a weird one, guys, right? Because she wasn't really a bad champion before her buff. She actually was pretty heavy-handed when it came to dishing out damage, and she's still really heavy-handed. Now, they did not buff the one thing that I wanted them to, which was her block proficiency, because, again, you can dex a whole lot, guys, and all this kind of stuff, but really, you're going to end up taking strikes into her block if you're trying to, excuse me, late at night when I'm shooting these videos. But you're really going to have to start taking damage into the block. So I really wish they had boosted that. They didn't, but she's still a great champion. Plus, they added her shock immunity as well. So she really is a cool champion, guys. And if you're a good Nebula player, can you do some crazy stuff with her? And that being said, Nebula is going to go into the exceptionally good category. Now, talking about good champions, we have Civil Warrior. Now, I remember when I first got the game and he was in there, and I was like, dude, Civil Warrior looks cool. I still, fight me, bro, but I still think he is one of the coolest looking champions in the game, hands down. He looks phenomenal. And he sucked. He had nothing going for him. He was very just like all the old champions, you know. I mean, there were a couple of really good ones, but there were many that were just kind of like carbon copies of the other ones. And they didn't really have any abilities. Civil War was kind of that way. But with his buff, he does have a pretty good ability to build up Furies and even armor ups in the right situation, depending on how you're using them. But really, he can stack his Fury ups, and he can stack them up a ton. But that being said, he's a little long-winded when it comes to fights. And at the end of the day, even with all the Furies, he's not the greatest overall damage dealer. Like, you're going to get other people that can do similar damage without so much effort and without having to take a break so much during the fight. That being said, he's got some pretty good immunities to him as well, making him very good for things like suicides. But I will say that that because of his gameplay style of having to dash back and hold and make sure you don't get hit by a heavy or anything like that, and because that damage just isn't quite up there to where it should be with how much work you got to put into it, I'm going to put Civil Warrior into the good category. I think he is a good champion, and I do like playing with him now. But again, I don't want to take I don't have the patience to play him, and that's you know, maybe that's on me. War Machine. This one is a little difficult for me, you know, because there's two aspects to War Machine. There is War Machine himself as far as gameplay goes, right? How much damage he can dish out, the things that he can do. And from that aspect, I think that War Machine, while better, is still a little underwhelming. And the problem with the underwhelming part is that if he had gotten a little bit more damage, but his rotation wasn't so ungodly long, I think I would rate him higher. But the thing is that his rotation to get really crazy damage is so long. Excuse me, these yawns keep on coming. And they're so long and they're so like minute in time. Like you really have to time things well. I find playing War Machine a little stressful, and also, like I said, it's just a lot of work to get what you're going to get out of him. So from that aspect, I'm not overexcited. I think he's better than he was, but I'm not overly excited about him. Now, that being said, his synergies with the tech class are really, really good. But we can't just rate someone on the synergies that they give to everyone else. So because I'm not really rating their synergies, this isn't a synergy tier list, this is a singular champion tier list, I'm going to put War Machine in the good slot. You know, I think, if I didn't mess that up, hang on here. Messing up all these things. There, and that's how you use shortcuts on a keyboard. So, again, I think War Machine, if they would just, honestly, alter his rotation, not even boost his damage, if you just alter his rotation to make it a little bit more friendly to a fight, that would be really cool. But that being said, like I said, his synergies are fantastic. Speaking of fantastic, now I want you guys to really pay attention to this list, because we've got all these buffs that happened, right, for all these different classes, and you got one buff, really just one buff for a mutant champion, which really shows you the strength of the mutant class altogether. Of course, there are a few noodles in there. My gosh, I'm so sorry, guys. Yeah, there are a few noodles in there, but man, you can really just see they really didn't go to buffing the mutant class. They know that they don't need it as much. They're one of the, if not the strongest class in the game. Bishop was one of the weakest mutants in the game and became a very, very strong contender for a great mutant. He's got so much going for him with what he can do with energy damage, and he's got a little bit of healing, his ability to carry energy over into the next fight. He's a cool champion. He can do a lot of cool things, and he really is good. And so I think for Bishop, he's going to have to go exceptionally good. He's a great champion. Is he top of the mutant class? I'm going to say no. Maybe that's debatable, but I definitely think he is up there. He is very close to the top. Now we've got Ebony Maw next, and Ebony Maw was one of my favorite villains in Infinity War, and then he was in the game, and he was so puny, guys. He just had no damage to him. And when we heard Kabam Broccoli talk about him, we found out that originally Ebony Maw would have been one of the most, if not the most powerful champion in the entire game in his original incarnation, right? In what he originally was, but he was dialed back a lot. Now his buff brought a lot of that back, but I would still say he's still a little low on the damage. But we're not rating this only on damage, right? He's a little low on the damage, but still, he's got a lot of good degeneration, and he can really power control. I mean, he is a great power control champion. He's got the falter ability, and he's got the non-contact hits, which has its own benefits, especially as a defender. Because of all those things, Ebony Maw is going right into exceptionally good. I do think he is a great champion. Again, I'm not the best Ebony Maw player, but I think he's a great champion. Speaking of champions, at the bottom that were brought way to the top was Diablo. Now, Diablo was given a great buff and became one of the biggest poison champions in the game. And, you know, I think he and now Toad and also Immortal Abomination are right there at the top for the biggest or champions who can stack the most poisons in the game. So Diablo really does have a great ability to dish out damage, especially when he's awakened, and he's got a great regen ability. He is a super champion. Now, this one was tough for me. Again, Diablo does have all that stuff going for him, but at the same time, would you put Diablo up with Hercules? And I just think you don't put him up there with Hercules right now. He is such a good champion, but I just don't think he is the same level as the other God tier champions on this list. So because of that, he is going into the exceptionally good slot, but I could be convinced otherwise, make a strong case for it, and maybe I could see changing it. But he is a very good champion. Now, the Hood had quite a 2021. He was already a good champion. I was really starting to like Hood anyway. I was starting to use him a lot more regularly. And then they buffed him, and I was like, dude, this is a killer buff. This is awesome. I loved it. And people complained. People didn't like that he had lost some of that utility that he had had before the buff. So then what was happening in a weird stroke of whatever to do, Kabam unbuffed him back to original status and then fixed it and then rebuffed him. Why they just didn't leave the buff and then fix it, I don't know. I guess because people were complaining about too much about the utility. It won't stop. Then he lost. But that being said, guys, all that utility has been added back, and he does have his new features with his little the hex bullets, right? So Hood, I think, could potentially be rated higher. The problem that I have with Hood is that the way you have to play him in order to make him viable for more than really 1 or 2 fights. Like, if you want to get a ton of damage out of Hood, he's really only going to be good for 1 fight, and then you're kind of done with him, which is unfortunate because his gameplay mechanic is really cool. But again, he's a one-night stand. You know how it is. But that being said, again, utility really good, and he can dish out the damage. He's got a little bit of best of both worlds. I'm gonna put him in exceptionally good. I think if those hex bullets weren't as persistent, if he got new hex bullets every fight, I would almost maybe put him higher. I don't know. That's another one that there's a little bit of a balance act there to him, and so I think that balance just kind of brings him down a little. So, all right, Mr. Fantastic. Mr. Fantastic, again, it's one of these champions that I was really surprised that he got buffed because he's already a good champion. He's got a lot of things going for him. And not only that, he's got a lot of good synergies going for him. He has a ton of cool synergies. He's got the best of both worlds there. He's got utility. He can ramp up the damage. He's got the synergies. He's a great, and I hit my mic, sorry about that, guys. But he's a great champion. That being said, again, he's not broken, and I'm not going to put him up with someone like Shang-Chi, let's say. So for that, Mr. Fantastic, though, is an exceptionally good champion. You're seeing a theme here, guys, about where a lot of these champions are ending up, because at the end of the day, they did a pretty good job with buffing a lot of them. Speaking of good buffs, Miles Morales. Wow. If there was, earlier I named 4 that needed a buff, if there was a 5th, maybe Miles, right? Every time I say it, I think of more people, but Miles, not just for fandom, I mean, fans obviously love him, but he didn't have anything going for him. But man, oh man, Miles is one of those characters that, given the right circumstances, can completely cheese fights. And he has an ability to ramp up damage, but it's not broken. It's not insane damage. But he's got good utility, and his biggest thing, his ability to 100% avoid unblockable special attack is just fantastic. Because you end up with something like a Rage Note or something like that, where all of a sudden their attacks are unblockable, and their special attacks are unblockable, and he can really help you out in those fights. Miles is a great champion. Takes a little bit of getting used to. It won't stop, guys. I'm so sorry. But with all that being said, though, I think he is an exceptionally good champion at this point. Yellowjack is one of those champions that I haven't really played with a whole lot. I think I actually played with him more pre-buff, just because he was one of my best ones in the roster when I was using those star level of champions. Yellowjack got some interesting changes with how his like overreaction or his reactor overload like buffs up. But Yellowjacket, again, I don't think he lost any utility in before, and I think he was a solid champion before. They added a little bit more to him, but I don't really think it was enough to change brackets on him. So for Yellowjacket, I think he's going to stay in the good category. Now, looking at Joe Fixit, I have so many, I don't know, strange feelings about Joe Fixit. Again, he was one of those champions that really, really, really needed a buff. Everybody could agree with that. But he got this really strange, way overcomplicated buff. Gosh! There's just going to be a video of me yawning the entire time. Oh my gosh. But he had this really strange buff where it's very complex to play him because there's so many things you have to keep track of. Like, but at the same time, he has a lot of utility. He can do a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, is his damage great? Not really. Does he have a lot of utility? Yes. But it's not the easiest to access every part of that utility. So because of that, Joe, he's the only one I'm really doing. I'm going to put him into sometimes useful. The thing is with his playstyle, are you really going to pick Joe over anybody else to take into a fight? I mean, really. When you're looking at your roster of people, whether it's just science class or everybody, do you think to yourself, I gotta have Joe. That's who I gotta have. You know, you're not gonna think that at all. I really don't feel like that. So unfortunately, Joe is going to go into the sometimes useful. And it's just, I'm hoping for another buff later on that honestly, not really a nerf, just a change. Just change up some of his gameplay so there's not so much to keep track of. Getting into the skill champions, guys. And tell you what, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to cut these. Why didn't you shortcut? I don't know. And we're going to look at these guys because the skill class is a class that I have really come to love quite a bit. In this case, we're looking at Mole Man first. And this was a champion that got a really substantial, really good buff. I don't play with Mole Man a whole lot, just because I haven't rigged up the champion yet. But he has a lot of immunities. He can dish out a lot of damage. He's just got a lot going for him. His ability to shrug off debuffs is really good as well. Although it makes him a little bit of an issue if you're trying to run something like Willpower. But that being said, Mole Man is a great, great champion. And he absolutely deserves to go into the exceptionally good slot. Some people I know would honestly rate him higher. They would put him in a God tier slot. Again, I wouldn't put him up there with Hercules, but I think he is a great champion. Speaking of great champions, we have Kingpin. I really don't, I mean, you know, I don't play Kingpin a whole lot, but I've seen what he's capable of. He is capable of some crazy things and can really just run through some content quite easily. So, again, not God tier level on my list, but he is exceptionally good. He is a great champion. And this is good, guys. You know, when we're looking at the whole tier list overall, how things are coming out, in my opinion, when you're looking at the game, you know, again, not everybody has to be broken and God tier, but look how many exceptionally good, and even just good that we're looking at. That's giving you a lot of different champions that you can use in a lot of different situations. And that's really heartening, not disheartening. It's heartening for the game because, again, before, I would say maybe there are even more kind of meh champions than there were really great champions, and now we're really seeing that with these buffs, we're getting some really good champions in the game. So that's awesome. Crossbones. Crossbones is, he's really cool. You know, one of my favorite things about Crossbones, and I released a video on this right when they first buffed him, if you time things right with Crossbones, he can completely shut down Nick Fury. Especially the charges, the tactical charges that he gains, and even his ability to turn into the life model decoy. You can really kind of cheese Nick Fury, but you gotta time that thing perfectly. And I think I only timed it perfectly like once or twice, and it just happened to be the time I recorded it for a video. So, but Crossbones is really cool. He's a great defender. He's a great on attack as well. Really good damage, really good utility, ability to build up and maintain Furies. Really cool champion, guys. Like what they did with Crossbones, we're gonna go ahead and slam him into the exceptionally good category. Now, we had two Black Panthers in the game, and we were told that they were both going to be buffed at some point. We got the OG Black Panther first, and we are still awaiting Black Panther Civil War. Again, are they waiting for the next Black Panther movie? Not sure. Hoping that'll come out soon because he really deserves it too, and I have a 6-star waiting for me to rank up. But the OG Black Panther buff is really good. He's got a very different playstyle. Little hectic, a little crazy. It really depends on your ability to intercept. And so if you're really good with intercepting, then he's the champion for you. But I'll tell you what, guys, and again, we can't rate a champion based off of a synergy, but just to throw this out there, his synergy with Hercules is so freaking good because Hercules gains the ability to get unblockable special attacks, which is just awesome when you're trying to intercept people. And if you mess up and they end up blocking it, then you can still hit that special attack because it's unblockable. And OG Black Panther, what he got was the ability to infuriate his opponents. So, like Hercules, you go in, you do 1 or 2 strikes, and then you dash back. It'll infuriate the opponent, and they're much more likely to dash in. Great for Black Panther's gameplay. Honestly, the Infuriate should have been a base part of his kit. It really should have been a base part. But the fact that you have to bring in a God tier champion to assist, I mean, it gives you 2 great champions. And that's the great thing about really good synergies. You get to use 2 great champions, and that's awesome. Black Panther does a ton of work and can really dish out some great bleed damage. So because of that, we are going to go ahead and put Black Panther OG in the exceptionally good category. He is that good. He is awesome. Hawkeye. The biggest regret I have about Hawkeye's buff is that they did buff his animations. You know, they buffed the visual lighting almost on Captain America OG. It's really kind of weird. But I really wish that they had buffed Hawkeye because his animations still feel very first 1 or 2 years of Contest of Champions, right? He looks stiff when he strikes, especially he's got like this leg kick. He just like doesn't bend his knees, like right? It's very stiff. So I wish they had updated his animations on that. I like that they included a new gameplay mechanic. I always love when they come out with new gameplay mechanics, even if the champion turns out to be kind of meh. I love when they come out with new mechanics. His ability to hold and get those precise shots, really good. Hawkeye is really great awakened. Unfortunately, I have 2 versions of him. Well, I have more than that, but I have 2 main ones. I have a 5-star and a 6-star, and they are both unawakened. So I'm waiting to awaken him to really get that up because that can make each of those precise strikes that you get, those perfect release strikes, a critical bleed or a critical attack, which has a good chance to give a critical bleed. So, but Hawkeye is really cool. He does have some more utility. They gave him a slow debuff as well as his power drain, which was nerfed a little bit, but still a really good power drain. He's got a lot going for him. I really like Hawkeye, and he's not broken either. So because of this, we're going to go ahead and put Hawkeye in the exceptionally good category. Speaking of champions who were broken, and I'm pretty sure they fixed it, is Thor Ragnarok. Now, Thor Ragnarok was never a terrible, terrible champion, but he definitely got a really cool buff. And his rotation is really cool too. It's very easy to pull off. He's a fun champion to use. You got to be very careful with him because if you are getting too many stuns on the opponent and dishing in a lot of damage, then you can always push that opponent towards the special 3. And so you do have to be careful with him. Now, originally he was broken because he could go into a state of infinite unblockable with his basic attacks. I'm pretty sure this has been fixed. But again, nothing that was, I mean, maybe it was definitely game breaking. It was overpowered. But you couldn't use your specials with it or else you would lose the unblockable. But still, unblockable basic attacks for the entire match. It was kind of cool. But Thor Ragnarok, great champion, great buff. We're going to go ahead and throw Thor into the exceptionally good category. Hey, he's a friend from work, guys. All right, so Massacre. Massacre was already a good champion. He was solid, and he's part of one of the holy trinities of MCoC synergies, and with Domino and Red Hulk. So I always liked playing Massacre, but they did exactly what I wanted to do. This is one buff that they did exactly what I wanted, which was they extended the timer and on getting his incinerate charges on his bat, which was the biggest pain in the butt trying to gain those incinerate charges, and they burned out too quick. So I really love that they basically doubled those numbers there. That was awesome and exactly what I wanted to see. And they even boosted his damage on the special 2 unbelievably because it was already really high. But man, I tell you what, if you get the opponent blocking and then you hit them with a special 2, holy cow, can it wreck some champions in this game. So he's a fun champion to play. I don't play him a whole lot just because he doesn't have a ton of utility, but he does. He's just a fun champion, and he is a good champion. So, but I would even go to venture to say that he's an exceptionally good champion. I would totally take him in, totally deserving of that Holy Trinity status. He is a very useful champion to even use with that. Ronan. Ronan is a champion that didn't overly need a buff, and then he got a buff, and some people think it's not a buff or it's a nerf. Ronan has the ability to do a lot of different things, but he has a very high skill gap. Like, you really got to be on your game to play Ronan. And the problem with having to be on your game so much to play a champion is that, again, as we've talked about before, there are nodes in this game that can make the game kind of crazy. There are fights in this game that make you crazy by themselves, and then you have to worry about a stressful gameplay like Ronan. I think that he's got a lot of utility, he's got a lot of things going for him. He can dish out some damage, but at the end of the day, I just don't feel like he's the champion that you're going to choose to go into a lot of Act 6, maybe Act 7 content. So for those reasons, even though he's solid, and that's the key, he's solid. We're going to put Ronan in the good category. Again, I know there are exceptions to the rule. I know that champions can do crazy things depending on the scenario, but I think in his case, I don't think he's exceptionally good. I think for most people, he's going to be good. And our last one on the list, guys, and one that I was really adamant about getting a buff and was so happy to see, was Karnak. Now, Karnak is, he's one that, in my opinion, if it were just me, I'd probably rank him higher. But just how he feels playing the game, again, so he's great for evade champions. Okay, his special one, he can then counter evades. That's awesome. He can crit through block, and he's got a little bit of a burst of damage on basic hits. That's pretty good too, but nothing to write home about. In fact, you could stop at his 2 focus charges and be pretty good. His special 2 gives you a reasonable fury, but that fury really excels when you get 2 to 3 stacked up. And the special 3 is the special 3. It doesn't really matter. But the problem with with Karnak is that he doesn't really function any different. He's kind of a boring champion to play. I mean, just hit, special 2, hit, special 2. If I'm playing evade, special 1. And until you really ramp up those furies, it takes you a while to really see the damage. Now, the one thing I will say about Karnak is he's great for not placing debuffs on the opponent. And so in some fights, there's a lot of restriction on how many buffs you can gain because he gains passives, or how many debuffs you place on the opponent. I think he's good in those situations, and I really like taking him into, like, we play like mid-level questing in my alliance, so I really like taking him into questing because he's just so simple to use. But that being said, I think he could use a lot more utility. I think he could use at least 1 immunity and some more utility with what he does. Again, I don't think he's bad. Before, I thought he was just trash. And now I think we need to rate Karnak as good. So, again, with me, my personal opinion, I would probably put Karnak in exceptionally good. But again, I'm trying to be very non-biased in a lot of these things. Again, using what I see from the community, what everyone says there. And so there is actually one more. So guys, there's actually one more champion that I need to mention. And this was one that I left up to you guys, because I don't play her really at all. And that is Guillotine. And obviously not Guillotine 2099. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to pull up the poll. I put out a poll on the YouTube channel. I said, hey, for everybody out there that plays Guillotine, where do you rank her on this tier list? And everyone kind of gave their thoughts on that. And so we are going to add her in right now. So Guillotine, by about 8% since her buff, which was actually, as many people would say, a nerf, you guys, out of 115 votes, voted Guillotine No, I'm sorry. You didn't vote Guillotine here. You voted Guillotine really low in the rarely useful category. You know, again, I don't play Guillotine. I don't know enough about her to know that I would have rated her that low, but you guys are really not feeling Guillotine after her buff. And boy, it shows. I mean, that's right now, we don't have any trash champions, but for me, that's about as bottom of the barrel as you can get. So, again, there was only one, like 2% of people said exceptionally good for Guillotine, but 40% of you guys really think she's not that great. So, there you goes, guys. There you goes, guys. Now I'm from Jersey all of a sudden. But you can see, here's our tier list for the buffed champions for 2021, guys. Thank you everyone for your input on the Guillotine. Again, I didn't know how to rate her. I never played with her. I've seen mixed reviews on her, so I'm going with what you guys say, guys. Now, again, looking at this, I hope this helps you guys out to make a decision on if you are going to upgrade or rank up a champion or not. If you disagree with any of my rankings, let me know. But again, be prepared to defend your position, and make sure you send me some content to watch or even put on the channel to prove me wrong. Guys, I hope you have found this helpful. I hope you had fun watching the video as much as I did making it. Sorry about all the freaking yawns. I guess it's time for me to go to bed. But with all that being said, guys, as always, I will catch you on the flip side.